Have you ever met someone who claims to be very spiritually evolved? However, if you offer any piece of feedback or critique, it could never be their fault, right? They get easily offended and they come back with something like, well, that's not me, that's you reflecting your shadow upon me, because God forbid if that person could ever admit to any mistakes. Or perhaps this individual always claims that they're awake, always talking about how awake they are and all these transcendental experiences that they're having, but they can hardly pay their electric bill, for instance. Or perhaps an individual who's always undermining the feelings and the suffering and the pain of other people by claiming that, oh, well, you're just not spiritual enough, your vibration isn't high enough, so therefore all this pain and suffering, it's just your fault. What I am talking about is spiritual egotism. And it's been around for eons and eons and eons, but I wanted to take a moment to talk about it here today, especially if you're in the practice or in the process of learning and expanding and growing, and maybe you're teaching about spiritual ideas and philosophies, and how easy it is for the ego to come in and wrap itself around our practices and our ideas, and how no one is impervious to it. I'm not impervious to it. I have to watch it all the time. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. I am Cindy Ola. I am owner of Sacred Garden Yoga, and our topic for today is the spiritual ego. As I mentioned, none of us are impervious or immune to the spiritual ego. And at a minimum, it could just be like annoying, but it also has the potential to do great harm and damage, not just to yourself, but to other people as well. And it tends to rear its ugly little head when our own insecurities have been triggered. There's aspects, like deep aspects of our personality that are trying to protect us from certain feelings and emotions, from feelings like shame or guilt, or just deeper wounds that we haven't been willing to look at yet. And so there's aspects of our ego, our personality, that tries to protect us from that. Well, your spiritual practice, in essence, it's supposed to help you dig into those different layers of yourself so that you can integrate those insecurities and those wounds, and begin to understand it, and to love yourself more, even within the midst of that. But if that kind of work hasn't been done yet, then it creates the room for that spiritual ego to begin to develop. Thus, it's why it's so important that as part of your development and part of your growth, it's not just about all these transcendental experiences, right? It's not just about these Kundalini awakenings. It's not just about, talking to aliens and having these magical experiences on the mountaintop. Like a true spiritual practice is going to take you into the nitty gritty of you. It's going to take you all the way down into what makes you human, just as much as to what makes you divine. And if we avoid that part of our practice, again, that's just the prime territory for that spiritual ego to come up and to develop. It's not uncommon for those who are locked up within their first, second, third energy centers, which represent the aspects of us that are very human, like our desire to feel safe, to feel wanted, to feel like we belong, our sexuality, the right to feel our emotions, and to claim our power. If those are locked down, it's easy to compensate for that by moving up into the realm of the sixth, the seventh, the eighth energy centers, which all have to do with spiritual development. But then it becomes more of a coping mechanism, and it can also lead to not developing our own emotional maturity, not just in the way that we handle the relationship with ourselves, but then the way we handle relationships with other people. And that creates a perfect breeding ground for the spiritual ego. Here are some other ways that spiritual egotism shows itself. One is the idea that my belief is better than your belief. which lends to this sense of spiritual arrogance and superiority. Now, I know that there is a lot of ignorance out there, but regardless, there are many, many paths. And this idea that your path is better than my path is what leads to things like war and genocides and some of the most terrible and violent things that have ever happened in humanity. The truth is that there are many, many paths, and that is a beautiful thing because that gives you the choice to find the path that is right for you, the one that's going to take you back home to yourself. And that is actually quite a beautiful thing. Just because it's right for you doesn't make it right for someone else. Another way spiritual egotism shows itself is the belief that you have, in fact, already transcended your ego, that you have already healed yourself, that your work is done, that your work is complete. Therefore, you cannot cause any harm to anyone else. And this, in fact, is quite a dangerous one if you are in a place of power, because then that gives you the feeling, the right to say what you want to say, to do what you want to do without thinking that it could be harmful for someone else. The idea that you have already transcended your ego, I mean, unless you are Buddha or unless you are the Christ, him or herself, most likely you have not attained that place of enlightenment. And to think that you have can cause one for your own spiritual growth to be stunted. Luckily, I've had teachers, lots and lots and lots of teachers who have reminded me to keep a beginner's mind. I know that I'm always going to have some amount of work that I need to do, and then that's okay. You know, it's a beautiful thing. It doesn't make me less of a person or less valuable of a person. Whereas someone who thinks that they've already transcended their ego, perhaps that's what they're trying to achieve in their own sense of superiority, that hey, I am, I've already been through it, I am better than you, so therefore you need to listen to me because I have all the answers. I could probably count on my fingers how many enlightened people, like truly truly enlightened people, there are on this planet. As an extension of that is believing that your intuition has more validity than anything or anyone else's, especially when it pertains to another person, causing the other person to not believe in their own intuition when it has to do with their own body, closing down their own discernment. This one is an important one for me, especially as a teacher and an energy healer. There's a fine balance and teaching someone while simultaneously not disempowering them. Another one is believing that you are this divinely appointed leader and that your mission is more important or more superior than anyone else's mission, without realizing that we're all in this together. We're all here to play a part in this beautiful age that we're building together. If you're seeking a teacher or mentor, use discernment and check it out. Are they impervious to criticism? Do they get easily offended? Do they have an essence of superiority and that their morality is better than anyone else's? Do they think that they've already healed, that they have no more work to do? Do they deny their own humanity? Do they think that they are like the top of the top, the Messiah? These are the things that you want to bring awareness to, not just from the people that you're learning from, but also check it within yourself and check it frequently because, as I said, none of us are immune to it. I have to check mine. And it's not that it doesn't ever rear its little ugly head because it does. But I hope that I've cultivated and developed a sensitivity to it so that I know when it's happening. I can check it out, I can see it, and I can pull it back in and ask the bigger question of, okay, what is this actually really about? As I said, I've been fortunate enough to have mentors and teachers who talked about this so that I can bring awareness of it within my own self. And it's not to be judgmental or to be overly critical, but there's nothing like a big spiritual ego to stunt your growth. But anyways, that's it. That's what I wanted to share. I hope this information was helpful for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.